Welcome to the 338th commencement exercises at Harvard University. I'm here with Professor Emily Vermeulen from Classics and Fine Arts, Dudley Hirschbach, Professor of Chemistry, and we will once again offer commentary on these festival rites. Of course, viewing the most photographed scene at Harvard at the moment, the statue of John Harvard in front of University Hall. It's another somewhat moist commencement for Harvard. Reminds me of my favorite Harvard story. Emerson Hall, built in the early 1900s, is now, as then, the philosophy building. At the time, the faculty took very seriously the question what to put above the portal, and after due deliberation decided it should be "Man is the measure of all things." When they came back after a summer of European travels and all to move into their newly completed building, they were startled to discover that what is above the north entry is not what the distinguished faculty had decided to impart to posterity. President Eliot had edited a bit their original "Man is the measure of all things." Instead, what is there now are the words, "What is man that thou art mindful of him?" I think this is perhaps appropriate given the fact that so many people say it never rains at commencement. And here for the second year in a row, we've been reminded that even Harvard has no control over such matters.
Professor Hirschbach, I think you're quite wrong to say it's raining. Actually, it doesn't rain when Harvard says it doesn't rain. This is fair weather and bright and happy.
Let's hope it's that way in memory, at least.
This is an exceptionally large commencement, more undergraduate degrees than ever before, I think, 1,750. Normal senior class is 1,600. And the graduate degrees are also very numerous. Harvard is expecting something over 17,000 people here in the yard this morning. And I do believe that all of them will remember this day.
Oh yes, it's a wonderful family and tribal affair. Emily and I are having some special fun this morning since we're short one pair of headsets, so we're passing things back and forth. But what we see on the viewers' screens right now is the scene in the old yard where the procession is organizing. That includes the undergraduates, each lining up by their house affiliation, and what's called the President's Division that will include, in addition to the governing boards, the Board of Overseers, the President and Corporation, and the distinguished guest representative of the civil authorities. It will include many alumni and, of course, a procession of deans and faculty. In another quadrangle to the east of us, the graduate schools are organizing their procession. There are 10 graduate schools who will take part in the degree-granting exercises, including the School of Dental Medicine, the Faculty of Medicine, the Divinity School, the Law School, the Business School, the School of Design, the School of Education, the School of Public Health, the School of Government, All of those graduate schools are organizing in Seaver Quadrangle to the east of the main area where the formal ceremonies are held, the Tercentenary Theater.
I think it's really a very happy day this morning. I'm so pleased to be here with you. I hope it's not for the last time, but...
Well, I certainly hope so, too.
I've done this for 10 years now, and I think they're looking for somebody younger.
Oh, I can't imagine.
But it's such a happy time for families, for students.
Yes, indeed. But
what drops are not going to change anything.
What you just said reminds me of another famous dictum of Charles William Eliot, Harvard's chemist president from 1869 to 1909. He said, teaching should only be done by young people or those who never grow old. And certainly as a classics and fine arts scholar, you are acquainted with many such characters.
He had a way with words, I must say, as many of our presidents have had.
Yes, yes indeed. Well, we're witnessing the very colorful scene, getting more colorful by the moment as umbrellas add to the caps and gowns and to the beautiful banners hanging from the trees in Tercentenary Theater. Those were commissioned for the 350th birthday celebrations 3 years back.
You'll notice also that many of the students of all ages, are wearing white armbands this morning to honor the students of China in their protest.
I should think a great many, all who can obtain an armband, would wear one. It's, of course, a very poignant thing.
The undergraduates came up shortly after 8 with bagpipes and trumpets to attend chapel together for the last time in their lives.
Yes, that's an exciting moment. Each house has a senior breakfast. Some of the seniors get up earlier on that day than they do at any other time in their 4 years, but then they march together, sometimes with a rather motley crew of musicians accompanying them, to Memorial Chapel here. And Reverend Gomes always delivers a very memorable talk to the graduating class before they emerge out into the old yard to organize for the academic procession.
I see that one of the rules, Rule 16 in 1735, was that no freshman shall lean at prayer, but shall stand upright. I don't know if that's still a college regulation, but I'm sure the seniors were standing upright this morning.
Yes, I should hope so. Of course, many of them, in their freshman days especially, I think would have been found in a horizontal position rather than upright at the time of chapel in the early days gone by. I think we have a view now of a long line of undergraduates being organized, and the President's Division will proceed through the column of undergraduates. Indeed, this harks back to ancient medieval custom. One thing our viewers might be interested in is the origin of the hoods, which you will see on many of the faculty. The hoods are of various lengths, depending whether it represents a master's degree, a doctor's degree, an honorary degree. But in the medieval universities, as the academic procession wended through the rows of students, why So the tradition is the students would toss coins
like that,
into
okay?
those hoods, and presumably
Thanks.
that's why the higher the degree, the deeper the hood. I imagine some students would toss a stone or maybe a ripe tomato in a hood now and then as well.
Part of the Harvard band, the brasses, are leading the way now in front of University Hall.
You see some of the alumni beginning to
Next, the
Center Theater.
The big reunion class that's here today is the class of 1939, which, of course, faced such terrors and challenges as they left Harvard. And the 25th reunion class, the class of 1964, also went out into a very challenging period.
Of course, that's highlighted again by these epic events occurring halfway around the world in China today.
The scarlet robes now entering your picture and coming down to sit right at the front represent the new PhDs, of whom we're very proud.
There we see Dean Archie Epps leading in the procession of marshals, I think, who will help organize the seating of the graduates.
Faculty of Arts and Sciences is awarding 400 graduate degrees this morning. But I think, of course, as usual, the largest numbers will be supplied us by the business school and
Yes,
by the law
indeed.
school.
The business school has more than 700 graduate degrees awarded. In contrast, for instance, the dental school has 35. I suppose we should be quite happy at that ratio. The Benny School has 150, the Design School 180, the Kennedy School of Government, a very large graduating class, 487. Law School, 666. The Medical School, 170. School of Public Health, 330. And the School of Education, 560. The total of graduate degrees awarded today will be 3,897.
And the element we're missing is the foresters. We used to have a few foresters every year.
Ah, yes, indeed. That is striking. We certainly must find out what could account for that. Maybe they've been absorbed into the divinity school. That's their best hope for preserving our forests. The procession is developing quite steadily now, and the theater beginning to fill with graduates. Some of
Ah, bubble time, happy time.
that's right.
Very nice.
Many kinds of bubbles. You see someone else ready to generate another kind of bubble from a champagne bottle there.
It was one of the very happy aspects of this commencement, as commencements everywhere, is the tremendous range of ages that cover a century, or at least a century, I would think, of memories. That the youngest people here today, looking at the oldest people, and if they can remember it, passing that on to their children and grandchildren, are all part of a, as they say, an ever-flowing stream.
Yes, yeah. It's very poignant when you see the alumni moving between the columns of young students, of course, in order of the alumni class. And there are always some very venerable alumni that lead the procession.
Well, the 60th reunion class looks exceptionally nimble this year, I must say.
I'm sure they induce the young students to think to themselves, I'm going to have to take great care to come out that way 60 years hence.
Well, as Barbara Ward, Lady Jackson, when she got an early honorary degree, called them the feeble, the halt, and the game.
Today, Emily and I thought we would, in this pre-ceremonial portion of the program, invite some students for brief interviews. And the first student will be a PhD candidate. I think Dr. Rafia Zafar, soon to be doctor,
Rafia Zafar is very nimble, climbing up into this tree program, which, well, believe me, is not easy on wet metal.
I'm extremely impressed, Rafi. Beautifully done.
Wonderful.
We may have to add a new condition for
Wait, you know what I am even?
completion of your PhD here.
You have paper towels in
And
your pocket.
furthermore,
Oh, look.
Rafia has so much foresight, she brought with her towels to wipe off the raindrops that are scattered about our little treehouse booth. You see, Rafi, we're delighted to have you.
We want to congratulate you on your new job and on your marvelous career here at Harvard.
Thank you.
I think
You're going to be teaching at
At
Michigan.
University of Michigan in Ann Arbor, yeah.
It's marvelous.
I'm very happy about it.
It's a splendid institution. I know you'll love it.
Yeah, my mother is from Benton, well, she's from near Benton Harbor, above it, in South Haven, Michigan. So they're all pleased, cousins and things. I'm returning home.
And you did your PhD in record time.
Yeah, in 5 years. In
That's
5
really-
years. It's just apparently very fast. I think
It
the
is.
average in my program is 6.5 years. And according to the Times in Humanities, it's 8.3 or something terrible like that.
I think many efforts are being made to reduce that time now.
Yeah.
I wonder if our audience would be interested to know how you came to decide to pursue a PhD.
Well, I worked in publishing throughout my 20s, so actually I didn't start at Harvard until I was 29 years old. I was always interested in reading, not surprisingly. I liked talking about books, and people had always said, you'd be a great teacher. Are you a teacher? And I said, well, no. So I decided to do a master's at Columbia University to see whether I liked graduate school, and I loved it. And there I met Professor Solers and Professor Sack Van Berkovich,
And
who
we
were
took
both
them
well-known
both.
scholars, right? And Harvard stole both of them that year, and they stole me the following year. So that's why I'm here. They both encouraged me to do it.
We were very delighted, of course, when they came. They came at the same time.
Yes.
But yes.
Yes, the dynamic duo. I think Columbia is still hissing at Harvard,
Well, at
particularly
that
since
time we
they
showed good
did steal a
taste.
few of the graduate students. Yeah.
Well, I'm glad that Harvard had such wisdom and that it had so many consequences. Yeah, I am, of course, especially happy that the Dean of the Graduate School suggested we interview you because we've known one another for years. Rafia was a non-resident tutor at Courier House when my wife and I were co-masters.
That's
and,
right. So Dudley and I are old friends.
I think perhaps you might want to
Oh,
do observations.
I love being a tutor. Yeah, it's a good thing, particularly if you're interested in knowing whether you want to work with college-age students. As a non-resident advisor, I would have dinner with the students or lunch. We would have house sections. When you're a graduate student, you get your first teaching experience running discussion sections of big lecture courses. courses. So sometimes we could hold them right in the house. And they say, would you like a quad section, meaning the 3 old Radcliffe houses, or would you like a section in just some soulless room? So I always thought it was nice to have a quad section. And it was fun because then most of the people in the quad section are kids who know you from being a tutor at the house. So it's a teaching experience, but it's also very relaxed. And then after our class, we would just go in, pick up our trays, and continue the discussion. So it was a wonderful way of teaching. And you really got to know the students quite well.
So Harvard was really a good experience for you.
Being a tutor, it was wonderful. I didn't want to be a resident tutor because I decided I was too old and crabby. But, but a non-resident tutor, I thought, fit the specifications perfectly. And it's a good way to really understand how the university works. As a graduate student, you can be very isolated. I know some graduate students are automatically members of Dudley House, which is the off-campus house. But if you're a member of a house where the students actually live, you get to know other faculty, get to know other graduate students who are in the senior common room, which is like the weekly get-together hour for people who are affiliated with the house. You get to know the students, and you really feel within months that you're part of the community.
Well, I think it's very important to be able to see it as a continuum from the freshman to the oldest professor, because it really is.
Yeah.
And when you're isolated, you lose so much of the joy of it.
Yes, and I started teaching freshman comp, which is known as expository writing here. So I've seen some of my students graduate, well, last year, and then some of them, the ones I've had for sections, are people who've taken off a year are graduating with me this year. So it's a lot of fun. They've been waving, "Hi, Rob, go Rob." Even got a button from one of them that says, "No, I'm not a student." So she said, "I can wear it now."
Oh, I'm afraid you can't stop being a student that easily.
No, I don't think so, because I just don't think I'll be able to, particularly since I'd like to learn Spanish now. I do American studies. I'm interested in late 18th and 19th century American literature, but I'm thinking of moving further back, and I'd like to read the literature of the Spanish exploration, narratives of both Indian captives and priestly captives, and the records, historical records in Spanish. So I have to work on my Spanish, because you have your basic reading knowledge of Spanish, and we know what that's like.
But in all you said, I think you've given a glimpse of the infinite worlds that open up to the everlasting student.
Yes, well, I love graduate school. I mean, my students and my friends call me a nerd, or you can call me a born-again nerd, but I think it's been a terrific experience. I loved it. The other night I was sitting here in the rain, and I looked at Widener and I started to cry.
Well, anyone who can both graduate with such distinction and climb a tree as fast as you did gives a new meaning to the word nerd.
Yes, indeed. You're a marvelous example. I hope that many of our younger viewers might be moved to emulate you in many respects.
Well, I hope they will, because we need new faculty and doctorates, particularly in the 90s. And by the year 2010, I think half, did you say half of the faculty will be retiring? So
yes,
there's room.
There's a lot of room, and I'm delighted that you're among the ranks who will lead us into the 21st century so vigorously. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Thanks, Dudley. Thanks. Nice meeting you. Thank you. I'm going to go back.
Do be careful going down.
And perhaps you can welcome our next interviewee to clamber up into our little tree house. Thank you.
No, I haven't. I don't want to stand in the mud. It says down. No, it says down pretty well.
This is even more adventurous than I imagined it might be, Emily.
The nimbleness of our scholars is to be highly praised.
Even, would you like to come up? Yeah. Come on. All right. We will now interview.
Is beginning to fill up nicely. And
yes, indeed. Now comes undergraduate, even Mandaree. We're delighted to welcome you. As you see, you had no inkling, I suppose, when I invited you.
No, it's fun.
It would involve climbing up a tree.
That's right. At least I was able to take off my hat's a little bit too big. That was the big problem. That the coop misfit me, so I've been going around all week just pushing it off to the side.
I guess no one told you that there's a tradition that all hats are the wrong size at Harvard commencement.
I didn't know. I thought there was a tradition that it didn't rain on commencement day either, but I guess our connections are.
It's not raining.
Oh, okay. Just a drizzle officially, I'm sure. Okay.
I know that in your one of your many incarnations as an undergraduate. You were, in addition to being chairperson of the undergraduate council, very active in the council for undergraduate education. And in fact, you did your senior thesis on the role of education in American society. And I thought you might have some observations on this theme.
Well, they're not related. My thesis was about they're related interests, but not related so much academically. My thesis was about schools in New York in the 19th century, which maybe has something to do with Harvard education. I don't know, but the Committee on Undergraduate Education is one of a few student-faculty committees that exist. Your wife's on it, as you probably know. It's good. I'm glad you know. We discuss all sorts of things like academic advising in the core curriculum. My parents are both teachers, so I sort of do have an interest in education. I think that it's just sort of coincidental that they happen to tie together.
But I've heard rumors that you have stated to your classmates that you'd like someday to be mayor of New York City, and you might want to take this opportunity to begin your campaign.
No, I don't think I'll start campaigning. It's incredible that you heard that. I thought I only told my parents that. But mayor of New York City. I'm from New York. I love New York sports. I like to play sports, and it would be a great job if I could ever get it. I don't know how you train for something like that, or how you start campaigning, but it would be a lot of fun if I could do it. I don't think I'll be able to, though.
Well, people have pointed out that Mayor Koch may retire in time for you.
I don't think I'm old enough to get elected, but more power to Mayor Koch if he could stay in. So, if they has the presidents have they started walking in yet? It seems when you're walking through here, it seems like an endless procession. You never think you're going to get to the front. You know, we just stopped in the middle, and it's very scary with all
that
20...
might be a metaphor for your political career, perhaps.
Who knows?
But in fact, the procession takes quite a lot longer. As you can see, there's a large block of seats not yet filled.
Right.
Those are reserved for the undergraduates. It will still take about 30 minutes before the Tercenter Theater is filled. This gives you, however, a little different perspective. You will be seated down over there.
That's right. No, it's a strange sort of feeling for an undergraduate, I guess, because I think it's sort of different from other commencements in that you don't always, it's a very big ceremony, so you sort of feel lost in the crowd at times. But I know. I'm just saying, it's so big. It's just it's a strange experience to sit there, amidst 20,000 people, looking up at 1,000 people on a stage, and the house ceremony is somewhat more warm and personal.
Of course, if you didn't have the smaller, more intimate house ceremony to go back to, you might feel lost. But I think all of you should remember that commencement is designed exactly for you.
Oh no, I mean, we were sitting, but I'm not saying you lose that, but we were sitting this morning. They have a chapel service where Reverend Gomes preaches, and I turned around and I looked back and I saw 100 gowns, and all these people we've gone to school with who are so, each of them so, such an incredible story, really very bright, and it's very intimidating. It's not like, it is a little bit.
In some way, it's sad that you'll never all be together again.
Yeah, right. Maybe 70% of us will make it to the 25th reunion. But it's a lot of fun. It's just it's incredible when you think that 350 some odd classes have passed through here, and each some of them as large as this one, and it's very strange.
Yes, indeed. And Harvard now has 250,000 living alumni.
So I hope I make it a little while. I'd like to stay in the
We
living
have every
ranks.
confidence in you.
Well,
Yes.
Thank you very much.
I might just ask you one tough question,
Okay.
since we have alluded to what you might pursue ultimately years down the road. That is, in your experience in student government, there were some disputed and controversial things that came up, but usually happen. And what would you say was the toughest decision you faced during your era, was it a year or a semester? That you
I was
had?
chairperson for a year. You have to be very careful about the title. It's chairperson, not chairman or
indeed.
president. I guess I would sort of give two answers. I mean, the toughest issue and toughest decision. The toughest decision I had to make wasn't. It was just an unpleasant situation where somebody without authority had contracted to put on a concert with somebody where the council hadn't voted to do it, and I had to call this agent and say we're not going to be able to do it. And everybody said the council would never have a concert again. And this man was saying, well, if you do this, I'm going to sue you, and you'll never have a concert again at Harvard. And I'm sorry, I can't sign the check, without their authority.
But it's not exactly tough.
No, I'm going to get to the tough issue. No, it was very, very unpleasant. It wasn't tough. I did what I had to do. This was the past 2 years have sort of been interesting, because I think whatever the prevailing tide of sort of student government have gone a little bit more conservative. The undergraduate council, that's the student government, it's sort of not resigned itself, but it's resigned itself towards taking up less controversial issues and dealing more with things like putting on concerts and service-related functions, like making sure the yard has good lighting. And over the past 2 years, there's been, it's not the 60s, but an increasing sentiment that the council should really tackle tough issues. And a couple of the ones were this year we had a big debate about whether or not ROTC should be brought back to the campus. And last year, there was a controversy about what stance the council should take regarding final clubs, which are sort of non-residential fraternities that Harvard has. And on one hand, the council doesn't have a lot of power over that, we don't. It's the administration that ultimately makes decisions. But they're tough issues personally too, because I think with ROTC, there was a feeling that you shouldn't penalize financially disadvantaged students to make a statement. But on the other hand, there were people who felt military was, improper to be present on campus, and also many homosexuals felt that the ROTC was sort of a slap in the face, which it is. And it's just hard to decide how you want to make the statement about it. But it's very interesting to be involved where nobody has constituencies and everybody can sort of argue what they really think.
Yes, from the perspective of a faculty member, the kind of struggles that the undergraduate council went through on that kind of question represented nicely an intersection of your interest, your personal interest in education on the one hand, politics on the other.
Yeah.
Because what better way to appreciate the subtlety and complications of most political issues?
I see President Bach is on the screen looking at you. You should look back at him.
I really thought the unique thing about being in student government, I mean, not that I've been in real government or I'm sure if I will be, but that students really said what they felt. They didn't have to go back and go to their constituency in a small district in Idaho and say, I voted this way to get you a dam or whatever. People sort of were elected because they were good thinking individuals and did what they thought best, and that made for a really interesting and accurate debate.
You were spared some of the complications of the real world politics.
Yeah, yes.
Well, we
It's
look
a little
forward
better.
very much to following your career in the future.
Thanks very much
for joining us.
Yeah, it was nice to be here.
House today.
Thanks very much. I think I'll try and help Brooke up the stairs.
Good luck, Evan.
Thank you very much.
Careful.
Yeah.
I'm okay. Thank you.
Now we have a very good view of the procession, with the faculty portion of it, which is extremely colorful because so many faculty, of course, have their higher degrees from other institutions. And we're being joined at the booth now by extremely athletic young woman with many other outstanding attributes. Brooke Masters, who, among other things, is a feature writer for the Harvard Crimson, the famous undergraduate daily with such a long tradition at Harvard. There have been occasions when some people had the impression you wrote the whole paper single-handedly now and then, Brooke, so welcome.
Well, I didn't really write the whole paper. I mean, there are usually eight articles a day, and the most I ever wrote was 3 or 4. But I was it's my major extracurricular activity. I spend maybe At the peak time, I spent almost 50 hours a week there, which is not quite as bad as it sounds because it's all night once or twice a week. So in fact, a lot of it's out of your sleep, and so there's still time to see other people and have fun and go to classes.
I see your colleagues from Time and Newsweek have some very wet chairs reserved for them.
Yes, I
down.
think actually, I was supposed to be covering this for Time because I'm their Harvard stringer until they realized I was graduating. And I said, I'm not going to go work on the day of my graduation.
I see. But what you have said sounds quite extraordinary to me. I wish I knew how I could spend 2 nights a week working all night and all, since I know that you are graduating summa, the highest academic distinction at Harvard, in a major history, which requires a great deal of reading. How did you manage to write so much and read so much and do all these other things with only 168 hours available each week?
Well, you learn not to sleep that much, but more importantly, I think, I learned that, if you have a half hour between classes, instead of always running around and, just getting a soda, I get the soda and go sit down and read, part of a chapter. I'm lucky, I read very quickly and I remember it, so it's possible for me to sort of just read a little bit and remember it and get something out of it. I think I actually changed majors my sophomore year, in part because I couldn't manage. I had a joint concentration in math and history because I wanted to be a math major, and I also loved history. And I found a joint concentration has more work, plus math has weekly problem sets, and the combination was pretty lethal. So I just couldn't deal.
I can imagine that.
What are you going to do now, Brooke?
I have a summer internship working for the Washington Post.
Oh, fun.
And I'm going to be working on the national desk, which is lovely for me because I'll probably get to cover Congress and the federal government, other parts of the federal government, which is great because my thesis was on the Supreme Court and appointments. So I'm really interested in just seeing the government at work, and getting to write about it is even better. I mean, watching would be wonderful, but writing about it will be just perfect.
It should be an exhilarating experience.
I hope so. I don't know what I do after that, which...
Never mind what you do after that. Something
Right.
good will happen.
That's what I'm assuming.
Without a doubt.
Thank you.
I think perhaps
You should.
there are so many things we could ask you, but one thing I'm tempted, among all the wide range of courses you took at Harvard, are there 2 or 3 that you would say were magical in their impact?
Well, it's a wide variety. It depends what for. Certainly, E.O. Wilson's biology course, it's a Science B, which is a requirement for people who aren't really science majors, and it's an evolutionary biology course. He is so fantastic, just as a scholar and a writer, that having him up there, he looks sort of like Mr. Rogers also. So it was perfect. He was this brilliant scholar who was fun to watch, and it was a really good course. I learned evolution and all about, and he's really into ants. So we learned a lot about ants, but it was good. I really enjoyed it. And then maybe David Donald is a history professor who teaches a number of different courses, and I've taken a couple. His courses on the Civil War and Jacksonian America are both extraordinary. I mean, they're in my major. And they're entertaining and fun, and they manage to integrate some of the new social history and women's history, which gets left out of a lot of traditional courses, without sort of doing nothing but social history, which is Harvard's still having problems with that. There tend to be traditional courses and then women's history courses, or traditional courses and social history courses. And David Donald seems to manage to get both, which is wonderful. I think they're getting more integrated. I just remember being horrified my sophomore year in a Chinese culture course. It was Historical Studies A, which is another basic requirement, where we would sort of at the end of every lecture for about 5 minutes, and meanwhile the women were doing, and it was sort of set off in this, this isn't real history, but we're putting it in because you might be interested. I found it kind of offensive. And I mean, the professors really meant well. It was the kind of, they just didn't know how to do it. And that was something that I think professors who can manage to do it are really impressive for. Yes.
That's right. I think the undergraduates can do a lot in that direction by making clear to the professors the kind of thing they hope to see evolve. That leads me to what might have to be the final question in the time we have available. You have, of course, a good perspective as a journalist, a historian, on what has evolved in the social history of institutions like Harvard in the last couple of decades. And I wondered what you might hope to see when you come back for your 25th reunion in the way of further development.
Well, I'd love to see a woman dean of Harvard College or a woman president. I think it's time. I mean, Radcliffe is wonderful and does a lot, but for day-to-day life, it would be nice to have a real female role model. I think it's great there's finally a woman vice president. She's appointed this year, or last year, I guess. I would also hope that the faculty is a little more proportionate. 7% for tenured faculty is hard. I mean, women don't really make up enough to provide you with a role model. I never had a female professor or section leader in my major, with the exception of one visiting professor who co-taught a course. Beyond that, I don't know. I hope it's the same kind of people here and some of the same traditions, but also a chance for people to grow and be different. And I'd like to see protest. It's nice to have people always fighting for change.
Yes, let's hope that happens. I can't imagine it will not always be characteristic of this place, and it's people like you that guarantee it will happen. So thank you very much, Brooke, for joining us in this somewhat hectic treehouse perch. And I hope you're able to make it down safely.
Thank you.
We might preview the order of the commencement exercises. It'll be another 15 minutes or so before there'll be the joyous pealing of the bells, which will begin the festivities, the formal part of it. In the meantime, the academic procession is continuing, and the undergraduates are filling in their seats, parents, alumni, all squeezing into the Tercentenary Theater, where we have 17,000 chairs, but I think quite a few more people than chairs.
Well, there will be standing room where people are standing on the steps of the Widener Library and wherever they can fit in on the grass. I think it's just as... They were very kind to come around and wipe off all the chairs twice this morning and leave rags at the end of every row so that each person can get dry. But most people are drying themselves with copies of the Crimson, I think.
Yes, we should have pointed that out to Brooke Masters, the feature editor of the Crimson, whom we interviewed a little earlier. I thought perhaps we would preview the formal part of the ceremonies, which will get underway about 10 this morning, with a joyous pealing of the bells. The meeting will be called to order by the Sheriff of Middlesex County. It's, of course, the moment everyone has been waiting for, and always a delightful one. Yes, we see on the screen here Prime Minister Bhutto.
It's an exceptional list of honorary degrees this morning. I look forward to seeing them with great anticipation.
I was saying that the meeting will be called to order by the sheriff of Middlesex County. That goes back to the days when it was traditional to have riots as part of the commencement festivities, and so it came to pass that the sheriff of Middlesex and the sheriff of Suffolk counties are both always invited here in principle to represent order. And the sheriff will come to the front of the stage, bang his ceremonial mace, and say the meeting will be in order, whereupon he typically giggles, and so does all the audience, touching off the festivities with a nice blend of solemn dignity and a little bit of antic fun.
Sheriff McGonigal is very good at his job. He's very experienced at it. But generally speaking, the happy part of a Harvard commencement is this mixture of outward ceremony and total informality. So let the giggles giggle where they will. It doesn't hurt anything.
Yes, indeed. I think it surprises many visitors who have an image of Harvard as an extremely stuffy place to come and get this sense of fun that underlies ceremonies of this sort. Next, after the sheriff has done his duty, the chaplain of the day will offer a prayer. Then the commencement choir an anthem, a traditional anthem, and there will then be 3 speeches, all delivered by students. Another striking aspect, as far as I know, unique in American universities, is that all the speeches given during the formal commencement exercises are delivered by students. As Emily mentioned, in the alumni exercises this afternoon, we of course will be addressed by President Bach and Prime Minister Bhutto. But here in the morning exercises, the speeches first in Latin, and then 2 English speeches, one by an undergraduate, one by a graduate student, are all delivered by students. That will be followed by an anthem, and then the conferring of degrees on candidates from the Graduate School of Arts and Sciences and the other graduate schools. Finally, the conferring of honorary degrees and degrees to the graduates of Harvard and Radcliffe colleges.
The faculty is now taking its place on the edges of the platform. And so far as I can tell, the procession in this complicated day of crowding is really being extremely briskly handled. I don't think there are going to be any delays or disorders of any kind.
That's my impression, too. I think it's, in fact, if anything, ahead of schedule. It's such a colorful scheme.
Choir was out very early in the wet practicing because they haven't been together very much before, but the sound was wonderful as it floated out before 8 o'clock.
I have to confess, Emily, I actually get goosebumps witnessing this scene. This, as you like to emphasize, this blend of the older generations and these bright, young, fresh people, this glowing with promise for the future.
Well, I think it's a day that one should very much keep the parents of families in mind. The parents who worked so hard to send their children here. The children themselves have worked to get themselves through. But it's a day where everybody can really be proud of achievement, of 4 years of course they goof off. Who wouldn't? You and I goof off. But really exceptional dedication to achieving some kind of a goal. Well, we salute the parents, brothers, sisters, grandparents, and even children of all graduating students.
That's right. Well, the ceremonies, as we mentioned earlier, have this blend of dignity and fun, and that, of course, reflects the life of a student. serious purpose, but also marvelous adventure, and the social interaction with other students, and the life of this place. We might say a word about the houses, since not everyone is familiar with what is, again, almost a unique feature in American universities at Harvard. Yale has a similar system. Princeton is instituting one. But the special aspect is that the sophomores, juniors, and seniors actually live in small residential units, roughly 400 each, called houses. Each has co-masters, one of whom would be a faculty member, and about 20 resident tutors, young faculty or graduate students, many more non-resident tutors and faculty affiliates that together form a community that really, in effect, is a small college within the larger university.
I think that's the nicest aspect in some ways of this commencement, which will be invisible to everybody watching television, is what the students do when this ceremony is over, returning to their houses and receiving their diplomas and prizes directly from the master.
Yes, indeed. And that's also the pattern for the awarding of the actual diplomas to the candidates from their various graduate schools. After these festivities, they retire to other locations and receive from their own dean and faculty the various academic awards in addition to their diplomas. So again, it emphasizes this family organization of the larger institution. In fact, I might mention, I think we said earlier that Harvard rents 17,000 chairs for this festivity in Terra Centenary Theater, but the total number of chairs used in commencement day is 71,000. The University Marshal, Richard Hunt, likes to emphasize that Harvard rents essentially every chair in New England for commencement day.
Of course, that is the professional schools and reunions as well as what's going on here at the heart of it. Where this, I shouldn't say his name, but many of you will know his face. We'll meet him close up and personal later on.
Another of the many Harvard traditions that all intersect at commencement here, of course, is the tradition of keeping the honorary degree recipients secret until the very moment. So on the stage here, our viewers see a rather recognizable face of an honorand, who we aren't yet permitted to identify, speaking with another very well-known Harvard figure, John Kenneth Galbraith.
The last of the procession is now winding its way around University Hall. The last clashes of cymbals are being given, and very shortly, this commencement, these festival rites, will be inaugurated. There is perhaps exceptional coverage of the event this year because of the admiration so many people feel for Prime Minister Bhutto and what she's trying to achieve. And I'm also happy to say that although there must be strong security, it's almost invisible. It doesn't impinge at all on the happy or family character of this morning.
That's right. The security arrangements are, I would say, very discreet. But nonetheless, of course, unfortunately, very important. Again, there's a scan on the screen before us now of the honorary degree recipients who are naturally seated front and center on the stage. Right behind them is a row of faculty members who are designated to accompany each honorand. Of course, usually someone who has known the honor and in their professional capacity.
There have been times at Harvard commencement, and this is long ago in the 17th century, when the president prayed so long that had he prayed a moment longer, Harvard College would have burned down. Had the ceremonies continued 3 minutes more, the conflagration would have extinguished Harvard College. But the Almighty intervened and told him when to stop, and all the students rushed forth and put out the flames.
And roughly when did that happen?
1674, I think.
1674. My God, oh, that's a fabulous story. Have you ever had an opportunity to mention that to the chaplain of the day, or Peter Gomes, or?
I would never dream of mentioning such a matter to Peter Gomes. He always knows. The Almighty always tells him when to stop.
Well, of course, I'm sure he would not think that you were suggesting he would go on too long, but I'm sure he would find a way to turn that story on its head in a very delightful and fascinating fashion.
President Locke is standing on the platform, perhaps because the chair in which he sits, the traditional chair, is so apparently uncomfortable. As one of President Quincy's daughters said, Papa had to sit in the most dreadful knobbly chair. It is a 17th century chair with lots of lathe turning on it, and I'm sure every moment of standing is refreshing to the president.
Well, I wonder if the advent of that chair had something to do with the earlier story you told, in which the president went on too long with his prayers.
The president, of course, wears the costume of a 17th century divine, which does come in two weights, summer and winter, and has, perhaps it looks to me like 1,000 buttons on it.
It's rather spectacular. As many buttons as the chair has knobs.
Yeah. Well, every ceremony has its painful side.
Yes. But what a contrast with the early commencements. There might be, I think in the earliest one in 1642, there were only 12 students involved, some of them graduating, some of them commencing. Because in those days, commencement was held in the fall and served both to usher the graduates out in the world and welcome the incoming students.
They were not only fewer, they were on the whole much younger, boys of 14 and 15 often, who felt they had been starved at Harvard, who complained about the bread and the beer with great regularity. There is a wonderful confession of one of the early president's wives who said she hadn't been aware that there was goat's dung in their hasty pudding. But the early scholars had something to complain about, but commencement was always a time of racing, wrestling, archery competitions with the Indians of Natick. An elephant was brought in on one occasion, plenty of public beer, and general, perhaps a little more rowdiness than we indulge in now.
One of the fine things about historical perspective is it opens your eyes to how interesting our ancestors were. I mean, they did an awful lot with what they had in those ancient days.
There was a time when in New England, Harvard was felt to be a place so crucial to the development of a wilderness that every family gave 1 shilling for its maintenance. Every New England family gave a shilling for the maintenance of Harvard.
Yes, I know another evidence that I find very poignant. In the basement of the Science Center, there's a little museum of historical scientific instruments, and they have correspondence there in which the early colonial settlers wrote back to London and ordered one each of the finest instruments available in what was for that day a scientific catalog. We welcome you to Harvard University's 338th commencement exercises held here in Tercentenary Theater in Cambridge, Massachusetts. In a few moments, the joyous pealing of the bells will occur and the formal part of this morning's exercises will commence.
With Harvard's usual fortune, I would say many centuries of good fortune, it looks once more as though it is not raining. If everybody is perfectly happy in the liquid sunshine and with the gaiety of the students and the distinction of those who will receive honorary degrees, we look forward to an exceptional morning.
Certainly another extremely memorable morning is ahead of us, and it's very stirring to look out over this amphitheater filled now with about 20,000 people, decorated with all these flags and banners that represent the Harvard houses and the various graduate schools, hanging from the trees. Complements the colorful gowns of the faculty and the graduates.
As we said earlier, Prime Minister Bhutto, once again, who will speak to us this afternoon, as we said earlier, there are more undergraduates today graduating than in, I think, any previous class. Over 1,750 will receive undergraduate degrees.
And 3,900 will receive postgraduate degrees.
That's amazing.
Among the various graduate schools at Harvard. 10 schools in all, including the Faculty of Arts and Sciences with 400 PhD and master's degree candidates.
And here with their families of several generations, and in some cases their children, with the bouncing of the beach balls, the flying of balloons, slightly tempered by the white armbands of mourning that almost everybody is wearing for the students in China.
Yes, so we might introduce ourselves once more. I'm Dudley Hirschbach, a professor of chemistry, and with me is Emily Vermeuler, professor of classics and fine arts.
Good morning, Dudley.
Good morning. It is very good indeed. We were also apprehensive yesterday with a heavy rain pouring down. Just last Sunday, you were at another institution down in Princeton, New Jersey, to take part. Commencement there, receive an honorary degree.
Thanks, Grandma. Yes, I'm very proud of my Princeton degree. I must say, I'm wearing my new Princeton hood. Very nice to be part of that family.
Tell me, are they quite as informal as Harvard tends to be in parts of our festivities?
It was a great deal smaller. The students stood up and were recognized by department, which I thought was a very nice touch.
Yes, indeed.
And even classier was they have a Latin oration without a translation.
Perhaps we should let our audience know that when the Latin disquisition is delivered this morning, many of the parents and others in the audience will be impressed that the undergraduates all seem to know when to laugh. But in fact, they have been supplied with translations, whereas the other members of the audience have not. It's striking how much the...
This will be President Martina Horner's last commencement. Yes. I see in her blue gown, Bryn Mawr. somebody who's really done an enormous amount for Radcliffe in her years of tenure of the
17
presidency of
years at the
Radcliffe
helm.
College.
And of course, it was a historic period of change.
Miss Radcliffe should be very proud of those achievements and has honored her very recently with a tremendous set of receptions and honors.
Her successor, Linda S. Wilson, was announced last week with great jubilation. And of course, I'm delighted that they will have succeeding a psychologist as president of Radcliffe, a chemist.
Yes, that's a very fine appointment, I think.
I think so, too.
A sailing chemist who will be doubly welcome.
Molecular chemistry is reasonably good preparation for dealing with human chemistry and institutional chemistry, I think.
Cheers now arising along with the beach balls from the undergraduates.
One of the marshals has appropriated the beach ball there, and it seems intent on squeezing the air out of it.
That's too bad. And the bells.
There we are, the wonderful, joyous pealing of the bells.
Mr. Sheriff, pray give us order. The meeting will be in order.
Sheriff McGonigal, with his usual aplomb, has done another grand job.
The chaplain of the day will open the exercises with prayer.
The chaplain of the day is John McInnes of the Harvard Radcliffe Catholic Student Center.
Spirit of God, giver of life, bless this moment of endings and beginnings. Infuse our knowledge with wisdom, the wisdom of the humble, lest arrogance turn our learning to folly. Crown our understanding with good judgment, that we may discern and decide how to act justly. Grant us courage in the face of opposition or apathy, for justice comes not with ease, but only with the integrity born of suffering. Awaken in us a spirit of awe and wonder as the mystery of life unfolds in our questions and struggles. Breathe into us a reverence for all that is sacred, for the holy in us and in others. Enkindle our hearts with love to heal a broken world. Bind us more closely to your human family throughout the world, especially to our sisters and brothers in China, keep the flame of freedom alive in their hearts and in their will to live united in peace. Gracious God, for times past, give us grateful memory. For the future, worthy hopes. And in this hour, the joy of friends in the company of your peace. Amen.
There follows now the Latin salutatory disquisition.
Latin salutatory disquisition. De gentibus Hawardianus. Joseph Leo Barloon, candidate in arts.
Joe Barloon is an exceptionally nice young man in the classics department who's going to teach a high school next year.
Oh, I'm delighted to hear that. He's written a very witty speech.
Savete, sodales, quodie longae viae terminum, qui simulest principium longiores viae per venerunt. Savete parentes carissimi, sine quorum dedicatione labore quaec celebratio fieri non potuisset. Savete praesides Bach et honor et vos inspectores reverendi. Savete professores mandatum vestrum genothis autan nos ad limen societatis doctorominum mulierumque duxit. Salve clarissima praefecta Buto. Praet dixit olim. Prae dixit olim vates Virgilius, dux femina facti, et ecce sic factumst. Nos stronatissima lumna, nomen Harvardianum et nomen Radcliffiense per totem orbem portavit. Hodie est dies laeta, sed etiam dies miranda, exempli gratia, Latine vobistico, quamquam mundis post tempora Roma antiquae maxime mutatus est. Si Romanus quidam hoc spectaculum videre possit, quid diceret, fingite amici, maximum illum ducem, Iulium Caesarem, Simon nobiscum ades et universitatem nostram observare. Auscultate, nuntium imperatoris de finibus Americanis misum. Senatui populoque Romano. Salutem. Harvardiana omnia sunt divisa in partes tres. Prima gens Harvardianorum voluptarii vitam bonam ut dicunt quaerit, vitam scilicet luxuriosam atque molem. In quibusdam est occupatio se monstrat imprudent incordia negoti et imprudenti cordia bibendi saltandique. Dicteorum est veni, vidi, bibi. Aliautem e primigente, vitam bonum cras non hodie quaerens. Carpe diem non dicunt, sed carpe futurum. Semper laborant, et convivia vitant. Quoniam sciunt annis pacis, falernum potusque pretiosos se hausuros esse, et illos odiosos atuc rolling rock hausuros. Hi homines mulieres quad viam morum, et Washingtoniam ibunt. Dicteorum est veni, vidi, capi. Pars altera Harvardionorum sunt intenti. Hi discipuli vitam voluptatis nec nunc nec in futurum ducere nolunt, sed vitas mures qualiorum corrigere. Alii res novas cupiunt, alii rem publicam ad pristinum statem radicare volunt. Dicteorum est veni, vidi, mutavi. Pars ultima Harvardionorum sunt confusi. Hi quid faciant autetim quare nesciunt. Autum dicuntur saepes amici fidelissimi et carissimi. Dicteorum est veni, vidi, circumstati. Forsitam putatus Romani, gentes tam divisas, a hostibus facile posse superare. Hostibus certe Harvardiani non carent. Gentes baroques sunt mult et proximae. Tigres Princetoniani, leones Columbiani, nec non gens no audaxque, quae fines orientales incolunt, cardinales Stanfordiani. Tamen dux fortis, Derek Bach, omnos populo Harvardiano inimicos domo sua vetusta arcet. Dictis Georgii Bush. Praefecti instituti Paulo minus clari. Bach minus e novo portu volantibus sic respondit. Lege mea labra. Ialenses delendi sunt. Cari Romani, in hac universitate novi otaiunt mundi, multa sunt mirabilia, mulieres unicum hominibus laborant, modo Amazoniarum. Nescio quae machina, quam mac idus malum dicunt, litera scribit meminitque. Diversa generet nationes unam societatem formant, ut vere dici possit, e pluribus unum. Quamquam gentes Harvardianae alienissimas multis moribus Romanorum se ostendit, nolite timere ne virtute quae Rome ad sum imperium gloriamque tulit careant. Sienem sapientiam cum modestia, vires cum clementia, coniungent ac justitiam lucro anteponent, aere perennius regalique situ pyramidin altius, ut Romanum sic erit nomen Harvardianum.
Very nice, Joseph Barloon.
Beautifully delivered. Of course, the early commencements were done in Hebrew, Greek, and Latin, and until 1896, all the commencement parts were done in Latin.
senior English disquisition, rich in good works, Kenneth Engkong Lee, candidate in arts.
Ken Lee was also chairperson of the undergraduate council this past year.
As I look out among you today, I see a living history of Harvard here before my eyes. The brave men who defended our freedom during World War II seated beside the hopeful activists who fought for a more just society during Vietnam. The women of Radcliffe who struggled for their place in society, sitting beside their daughters who will lead this nation into the next century. The old Harvard of Milton and Manhattan, sitting with the new Harvard of Cairo and Caracas. I see the Harvard of Westchester and of Baltimore, of Topeka and of Brooklyn, of Heidelberg and of Karachi, a Harvard family of different colors, different beliefs, different works. But I offer you today a story about another Harvard, an older Harvard, a Harvard where the wealth of its knowledge was not paralleled by the richness of its diversity, the Harvard University of 1958, where my father first turned the key at Hollis Hall. Many of us have come from far away to revel in this day of celebration, but I challenge any one of you to find a trip more grueling and more implausible than the one my father took 31 years ago. My own trip here was easy. A few bags in the trunk, a tank of gas, a 2.5-hour ride from that underrated town with the overrated university, New Haven. When I arrived here, 2 of my high school classmates were also unpacking their bags, while a dozen others were already seasoned undergraduates living in the houses. My father, by contrast, left his home, his family, his country, and with all the belongings he could carry, left port from Penang, a tiny tropical island off the coast of colonial Malaysia. Armed with his chemistry notes and an English dictionary, he sailed to Kuala Lumpur, then on to Singapore, on to cross the Pacific, bound for a new world. The trip by sea took over 6 weeks and brought him 12,000 miles. And when he arrived here, he didn't recognize anyone from his entire country, let alone his high school. He was one of 3 subjects of the British Empire. Now, how's that for intimacy? When I applied here, I had the support of my family and my friends. My father, he was called a fool. I had the good fortune to be able to revise my application with a computer, with the advice of teachers and counselors. My father, he wrote the rough draft of his application on banana leaves. I wondered how often I would go home in the next 4 years. My father wondered if he would ever go home at all. When I got here at Harvard, I immediately immersed myself in extracurriculars. My father, he immersed himself in his studies. You see, extracurriculars were merely superfluous to an education he was traveling 12,000 miles to receive. And he was determined to get the most out of his 4 years here. Actually, 3 years here. You see, he took his 4 years worth of courses in only 3. And in all that time, he made time for one extracurricular pursuit in particular, public service at Phillips Brooks House. And perhaps this is where the generation gap ends. The Boston Globe ran an article this spring about a different generation gap, the students of 1969 versus the students of 1989. And while the political climate and the events and the circumstances have all changed, students themselves have not really changed. We may wear shorter hair and less colorful clothes, but deep down inside, and that's where it counts, we're not the money-grubbing misers that some would make us out to be. It wasn't true in 1958 when my father came here. It wasn't true in 1969 when students rallied. It wasn't true in 1973 when Prime Minister Bhutto graduated. And it's not true now in 1989. Students have always shared the ideals, of public interest, public service, community, here in Tercentenary Theater and halfway around the world in Tiananmen Square. We are the students who feed the homeless. We are the students who care for the sick, who teach refugees English, who support cancer research. We give legal aid to those who can't afford it. We give shelter to those who can't find it. We give the power to read to those who don't have it. 75% of my peers in this year's senior graduating class have spent part of the 4 years dedicated to public service. 75%. Instead of fighting a war, we fight illiteracy. Instead of driving university administrators out of University Hall, we try to drive hunger off the streets. The cause has changed, the style is different, but the spirit remains the same. My father has never forgotten what he learned here at Harvard and at Phillips Brooks House. And if there is one thing that we've all learned here at Harvard, no matter what generation, it is that we must remain active contributors to our communities even after our commencement today. We do ourselves and our university no honor if we retreat into complacency. For how can we be proud of Harvard if its name becomes synonymous with hypocrisy, avarice, and apathy? Rather, let Harvard stand instead for sincerity, generosity, and charity. Harvard should be known by more than the richness of its endowment. Harvard should be known by richness in good works. Let us then leave here today committed to this Harvard creed, one that my father has carried with him to this day, one that we share with the students of China, that we may lead the quest for truth, foster a sense of community, and touch the lives of others.
Very moving speech.
Kenneth's claim is actually quite right. I think it's more than 75% of the seniors have been engaged in community service of one kind or another.
Oh, yes.
Graduate
Courier House,
English
you know,
address.
that's adopted a whole community. Underprivileged people.
Public service, plain and simple. Charles
National
Wayne
schools have been
Hooper,
very
candidate in public
vocal this morning.
administration.
Public service. I bet we hear that phrase here at Harvard at least 50 times a day and never even think about it. It is, after all, a simple enough phrase. It even defines itself. Indeed, the concept of public service is identified with a variety of very different activities. The television stations that bring us Masterpiece Theater and Sesame Street say they perform a public service. The utilities companies who, for a fee, provide us with our water and electricity also say they perform a public service. And even the Massachusetts State Trooper, who gives you a $175 ticket for going 5 miles over the speed limit, will tell you he is performing a public service. Public service is, of course, performed by public servants, those people dedicated to making life better for us all. I have a soft spot in my heart for one kind of public servant: the policeman, the fireman, the teacher, the welfare caseworker, the civil servant. For 25 years, my father was a New York City fireman in the Hell's Kitchen region of that city. My mother's been a social worker for almost as long. Most of their friends were civil servants as well. Growing up around such people, I suppose it was inevitable that I too would become a public servant. They were overworked and always underpaid. They had very big mortgages and very small cars. They fed their family's hamburger helper a lot of hamburger helper. And although they worked hard all week to save what they could for their children's college education, on Sundays, they secretly prayed for scholarships. Sometimes at picnics or birthday parties, I would see them seated together, and I would hear them discussing the system and the paperwork and the bureaucracy and how they were kidding themselves and nothing they did made a difference. But in the next instant, I would hear about a woman saved from a burning building, about a broken home that had been reunited, about a former drug addict who's out of the program and doing all right now, or about a promising student who wanted to be a doctor. And I would see the expressions of anger and frustration on their faces and the edge in their voices disappear. And they would begin to smile and nod knowingly at each other's success stories. And their communal sense of well-being, that special emotional reward that comes only when we reach out and help another person, was so powerful that even I could feel its warmth. I never forgot that feeling. At the Kennedy School of Government, I learned about a different type of public service. I learned about the high-paced world of congressional campaigns and Senate staffs and cabinet departments, about the not-for-profit institution and the grassroots community organization and the lobbying group. This is the world of carpeted and paneled offices, of dark suits with red ties, the world of cost-benefit analysis where often well-intentioned people reduce the needy in our society, the homeless, the elderly, the children, to cells on a spreadsheet to be saved or deleted. Public service, I was told, was not as simple as I had once thought. It was not enough to want to help people, to want to do the right thing. After all, each person's vision of the public welfare is different. You must prove, analytically and morally, that your vision of the public welfare is right, and the other person's vision, if not wrong, certainly not as right as yours. If you want to truly make a difference, you need position and authority, the best job in the best office. If you're a politician, your goal becomes getting reelected because, after all, you can't help anyone if you're out of office. Public service, the message went, was a business best left to professionals and experts, the brightest, the toughest, the best educated. These are the public servants we train here at Harvard. They become our policy analysts, our public managers, our lobbyists, our lawyers, and of course, our politicians. Ladies and gentlemen, regardless of what I've been taught, I do not think the public service is that complicated, nor do I think it should be left to experts. If we strip away all the egos, all the titles, and all the politics, each of us has the potential every day to make a contribution towards the common good. And each of us is, therefore, a public servant. If you welcome newcomers into your neighborhood and help them get settled, volunteer to be a big brother or a big sister for a lonely child, if you donate clothing or volunteer to cook Christmas dinner down at the local mission, you are performing a public service. These are very simple acts. There are no victory speeches, no press conferences, and yet the common good has been served. When we as individuals, speak out against injustice and intolerance, when we respect each other regardless of race or creed or gender, no computer analysis is needed. Not one thin dime has been spent. You don't even need to fill out any forms. If each of us were to reach out and help one person who truly needed us, a homeless child, an unemployed parent, a man or woman or child suffering from AIDS, we would be performing the greatest public service of all. We are often reminded that the essence of being an American is the freedom to live your life as you please. But there is another American tradition that we should never forget, and that is the spirit of community and the spirit of cooperation. There is, of course, a place for the professional public servant. Indeed, I would hope and expect that the majority of my fellow graduates here today would make the decision to dedicate their lives to careers in public service. But it is up to each and every one of us, regardless of position or profession, to do what we can every day toward making our communities, our nation, and this world a better, safer, cleaner, more peaceful place to live. And ladies and gentlemen, I'm here to tell you, you don't need a Harvard degree to do that. I came here to Harvard to receive an education in public service. I shall leave not only educated, but enlightened. I'm very reluctant to tell you this. You see, I only paid for an education. And I'm afraid if the billing office finds out I was enlightened also, they're going to charge me for it. In parting, I wish you all good luck and Godspeed. Thank you.
Mr. Hooper, very impassioned speech was marked by a moment when the sunshine condensed just a little bit into
Yes, I think it's very noticeable. There would have been much more applause, for instance, if so many people didn't have their hands wrapped around an umbrella. It's absolutely necessary now, just a real downpour.
These addresses by selected candidates for ordinary degrees being ended, the deans of the special departments will now present to the president and fellows and the board of overseers, in the favoring presence of the friends here assembled, the candidates on whom the various academic distinctions are, with due ceremony, to be conferred. The Dean of the Faculty of Arts and Sciences.
Mr. President, Fellows of Harvard College, Mr. President, and members of the Board of Overseers, in the name of the Faculty of Arts and Sciences and by its authority, I have the honor of reporting to you today that the first 4 groups of candidates who will be presented to you and the graduating seniors in Radcliffe College and Harvard College have fulfilled the requirements of the faculty for the degrees for which they are severally recommended. They will be introduced to you by the deans responsible for the programs in which they are enrolled.
Candidates for the degree of Associate in Arts, Bachelor of Liberal Arts, and Master of Liberal Arts and Extension Studies will rise. The Dean of Continuing Education and University Extension.
Mr. President, Fellows of Harvard College, Mr. President, and members of the Board of Overseers. As Dean of Continuing Education and University Extension, I have the honor to present to you these students, candidates for the degree of Associate in Arts, Bachelor of Liberal Arts, and Master of Liberal Arts and Extension Studies.
By virtue of authority delegated to me, I confer on you the degree of Associate in Arts, Bachelor of Liberal Arts, and Master of Liberal Arts and Extension Studies, and admit you to the fellowship of educated men and women.
I wonder if everyone understands what it means for these students in extension to actually achieve a degree after so many years. It is a marvelous and satisfying thing.
Candidates for the degrees of Master of Arts, Master of Science, Master of Engineering, or Master in Forest Science will rise.
Here come the foresters. They haven't disappeared completely.
Yes. Yes, indeed. Let's hope they never do.
The Dean of the Graduate School of Arts and Sciences.
The new Dean of the Graduate School of Brendan Mayer.
Mr. President, Fellows of Harvard College, Mr. President, members of the Board of Overseers, as Dean of the Graduate School of Arts and Sciences, I have the honor to present to you these candidates, each of whom has devoted at least 1 year to further studies since receiving the bachelor's degree.
By virtue of authority delegated to me, I confer on you the degree of Master of Arts, Master of Science, Master of Engineering, or Master in Forest Science, and certify that you have surmounted with distinction the first stage of graduate study.
It's the new Dean of the Graduate School, Brendan Mayer.
Candidates for the degree of Doctor of Philosophy will rise.
Here we go. This is the heart of it.
This is such a vital group for the future of our country, our educational institutions particularly.
Mr. President, Fellows of Harvard College, Mr. President and members of the Board of Overseers, as Dean of the Graduate School of Arts and Sciences, I have the honor to present to you these scholars, all of whom have devoted themselves to a rigorous pursuit of advanced study and have attained high distinction in their fields of scholarship.
By virtue of authority delegated to me, and recognizing your high academic achievements, I confer on you, women and men of learning, the degree of Doctor of Philosophy, and welcome you to the ancient and universal company of scholars.
I love that phrase, the ancient and universal company of scholars.
Oh, we all wish these new PhDs a magnificent life in scholarship and otherwise. I love that.
And that's a lovely anthem. We now move on to conferring of degrees and candidates for various
Candidates for the
graduate schools.
degree of Doctor of Dental Medicine, Doctor of Medical Sciences, or Master of Medical Sciences will rise. The Dean of the School of Dental Medicine.
Mr. President, Fellows of Harvard College, Mr. President, and members of the Board of Overseers, as Dean of the School of Dental Medicine, I have the honor to present to you these men and women, each of whom has devoted either 5 years to the study of dental medicine or at least 3 years to postdoctoral studies aimed at improving health and the quality of life.
By virtue of authority delegated to me, I confer on you the degree of Doctor of Dental Medicine, Doctor of Medical Sciences, or Master of Medical Sciences, and declare that you are qualified for practice and research in a demanding branch of medicine.
35 graduate degrees from
All the dentists are getting a big hand.
Candidates for the degree of Doctor of Medicine will rise. The Dean of the Faculty of Medicine.
Mr. President, Fellows of Harvard College, Mr. President, members of the Board of Overseers. As Dean of the Faculty of Medicine, I have the honor to present to you these men and women, each of whom has worked hard and well to prepare for a life of learning and service in medicine.
By virtue of the authority delegated to me, I confer on you the degree of Doctor of Medicine and declare that as physicians, you are ready to engage in an honorable and merciful calling.
170 new doctors today.
Candidates for the degrees of Master of Theological Studies, Master of Divinity, Master of Theology, or Doctor of Theology will rise. The Dean of the Faculty of Divinity.
Mr. President, Fellows of Harvard College, Mr. President, members of the Board of Overseers. As Dean of the Faculty of Divinity, I have the honor to present to you these men and women, each of whom has devoted at least 2 years to theological studies.
By virtue of authority delegated to me, I confer on you the degree of Master of Theological Studies, Master of Divinity, Master of Theology, or Doctor of Theology, and declare that you are well prepared to foster the health and vitality of communities of faith and to help in shaping the shared values of the broader society.
150 advanced degrees from the Divinity School this year, about the same number as from the medical school. Perhaps it's appropriate in our society.
It's interesting.
Doctor of Law,
The
and
lawyers are
Doctor
seated
of
behind
Juridical
us.
Science will rise.
$666 of them.
Yes, yes. And a boisterous lot to boot.
The Dean of the Faculty of Law.
Dean James Vorenberg of the law school.
Mr. President, Fellows of Harvard College, Mr. President, and members of the Board of Overseers. As Dean of the Faculty of Law, I have the honor to present to you these women and men, each of whom has devoted at least 3 years to legal study.
By virtue of authority delegated to me, I confer on you the degree of Doctor of Law, Master of Laws, or Doctor of Juridical Science, and declare that you are ready to aid in the shaping and application of those wise restraints that make men free.
The President loves that phrase more than any other, I think.
He delivers those lovely phrases so well, with such peace.
Candidates for the degree of Master in Business Administration.
Another extremely large group, 739.
They may not get much further.
It's become traditional for them to wave bills. I'm not sure they're dollar bills anymore.
Doctor of Business Administration will rise. The Dean of the Faculty of Business Administration.
This is
John H. MacArthur, Dean of
Mr. President, Fellows of Harvard College, Mr. President, and members of the Board of Overseers. As Dean of the Faculty of Business Administration, I have the honor to present to you these women and men, each of whom has devoted not less than 2 years to the study of business administration.
By virtue of authority delegated to me, I confer on you the degree of Master in Business Administration or Doctor of Business Administration, and testify that you are well prepared to lead in the general management of people and organizations in the service of society.
Glad for the stress the President placed in those last 3 words, in the service of society.
in the service of society, yes.
Candidates for the several degrees in architecture, landscape architecture, urban planning and design shall rise.
This is Dean Gerald McHugh.
The Dean of the Faculty of Design.
Mr. President, Fellows of Harvard College, Mr. President, members of the Board of Overseers, as Dean of the Faculty of Design, I have the honor to present to you these men and women, each of whom is qualified for a master's degree in architecture or landscape architecture or urban design or design studies, or for a doctor's degree in design.
By virtue of authority delegated to me, I confer on you the degree for which your studies have qualified you, and testify to your competence effectively to shape the space in which we live.
Candidates for the degrees of Master and Doctor of Education will rise. The Dean of the Faculty of Education.
Mr. President, Fellows of Harvard College, Mr. President, members of the Board of Overseers, as Dean of the Faculty of Education, I have the honor to present these women and men who, in partnership with us, have prepared themselves to serve as educators.
By virtue of authority delegated to me, I confer on each of you the master's or doctor's degree in education, and declare that you are well prepared to guide and serve the learning needs of contemporary society.
It's heartening to see the number 560 is as large as it is.
Candidates for the several degrees in public health will rise.
This is Dean Harvey Feinberg.
The Faculty of Public Health. Mr. President, Fellows of Harvard College, Mr. President, and members of the Board of Overseers, as Dean of the Faculty of Public Health, I have the honor to present to you these men and women, each of whom has qualified for a master's degree or doctor's degree in public health.
Graduates receiving advanced degrees in public health.
By virtue of authority delegated to me, I confer on you the degrees in public health for which your studies have qualified you, and declare that you are ready to advance the welfare of peoples everywhere by the prevention of disease and the promotion of health.
As you can see, the umbrellas have receded and the spirits are rising.
Candidates with the degree of Master in Public Administration. Master in Public Policy. Master in City and Regional Planning, Doctor of Public Administration, or Doctor of Public Policy will rise. The Dean of the Faculty of Government.
This is Dean Graham Allison.
Mr. President, Fellows of Harvard College, Mr. President, and members of the Board of Overseers, as Dean of the Faculty of Government, I have the honor to present to you these men and women, each of whom is qualified for a degree in public administration, public policy, or city and regional planning.
By virtue of authority delegated to me, I confer on you the degrees for which your studies have qualified you, and testify that you are well prepared to offer leadership in the quest for enlightened public policy and effective public administration.
This is also a large group, 487.